So welcome, Illi. Thank you so much for taking the time to introduce yourself and Family Constellations to the Sanya audience. And maybe we can just start with a little bit, since you're, visiting from abroad and no one knows who you are. Maybe we could start with just a little bit introduction about yourself and the work that you do.
Yes. Hello, Yasmin. And thank you for, nice to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself and the work that I do. So I facilitate groups and I work individually with people. I work with couples and I teach systemic and family constellations. I'm the founder and the managing director of London School of Systemic and Family Constellations. And I've been doing this work 13 years, specifically with constellations, facilitating group for much longer than that, since 1999. And Constellations offers a new way of seeing. It offers a new perspective over something that may be lifelong in the way it's been put in place, in the way it's been maintained, whether it's a behavior or a challenge or some kind of a difficulty, like addiction or things from the personal realm and the professional realm. We can diagnose by using the four principles of systemic and family constellations, the systemic orders, as we like to call them, which are place. Everything that has a place in the system deserves a place in the system, is entitled to have a place in the system. Time, who arrived to the system first? Who is the younger, who is the older, who has more length of service in the system and who is less? Exchange, which is what one gives to the system and one receives from the system. And belonging. How does one belong to the system, or what are the rules by which one belongs or sometimes doesn't belong or excluded from any given system? So we use these four principles as a guiding compass to navigate sometimes very, very complex family systems or any other human systems. It doesn't have to be a family. A family is just an example for a primary human system, the one that we belong to first. But we belong to many systems, many human systems, as we evolve, as we grow as humans. Yeah. And we are part of, groups of friends or schools or universities or football clubs.
But yeah, the family one is one we all share, and one that seems to replicate itself in other systems too very often.
That's right. That's
Illi,
right.
Maybe you can just start by, for someone who's never heard of family constellations and has no idea what the work entails or what they would expect from a workshop, can you maybe just kind of shine a light on how it would be?
Yes, of course. So we work in a group, which means we support each other. We work together, and we are, as a group, a resource that each and every member of the group can draw from and can bring something that will be then processed with the assistance, with the support of the principles of constellation and my facilitation. And one of the key principles of the work is that we place representatives for key aspects or key members of a system. So if it's a family-related question or a personal-related question, then we will be placing representatives from the group into a constellation, which will create a human map of the things as they are now, which means it is an inner image that is held by the client that relates to the family past or the past of the history of the system that we are looking at. It could be an organization, family, as I mentioned before. And when we do that, it enables the issue holder, it is what we call a client, the person who brings a question. It enables them to witness from a slightly removed point of view, not being involved and embroiled in the drama of the situation, if the situation is of that nature, but rather to be stepping out and observing that as a witness, seeing other people standing in the place of key members of one's system and observing the dynamics between these people, which often tells a good and often intense story of what is going on under the surface. So we are taking something that exists in the unconscious reality of the client, and we bring it up to the surface. So suddenly, things that were out of alignment in the family past, for example, if we're looking at the family constellation, things that were out of alignment. For example, if a child was parentified, the child was not able to be a child, remain a child, but child had to assume a position or a role in the family to support the parent or the parents, then there will be something in the life of that child that is out of alignment, and it will very often become visual, become visible in the process itself. And once we've identified these dynamics that are interfering or are out of alignment with the systemic orders, we can use the same process. Within the same process, once we've observed and diagnosed, we can also do the intervention part of the work, which is the actual healing, the actual therapeutic part of the work, which is based on naming emotions, naming cause and effect. Somebody did something, somebody suffered something. That suffering created a particular reality to that person or to this particular group, and that in turn created certain effects or certain traumas on the future generations. So we are able to unfold a very big history book in about an hour's work, simply by placing representatives to the key elements of that situation, of that whatever the question is, and witnessing the process to reveal to us where things could have gone wrong, and we attend to that within the same process and bringing things back to alignment. How do we do that? It's a little hard to explain, because the more I try to explain, the more complicated it sounds. However, when you're witnessing something like this, and you can look, there's quite a lot of information, videos that I published and articles online one can find, that put a little bit of structure to this magic, to this unexplained, very much driven by the subconscious tendencies of the person or the client. And this magic offers us this incredible amount of it's insight, really. That's what it offers us. It's insight. It's like pennies are dropping when we understand the connotation, the systemic historical connotation of problems that we face today with job, with health, with finances, with relationship. That's a big thing. Relationship, people are experiencing incredible amount of difficulty. But if they look at the origins of them or their partners, family past, what reveals are dynamics that are still showing up today, that are still alive and kicking today and influencing the partnership or the children of the partnership, if there are any, in ways that only within this ability to understand and to see, we suddenly see that things fall into place. Suddenly behaviors begin to make sense. Suddenly things like self-blame or a victim and perpetrator dynamic can resolve itself, because there is a reason, there is something that we can look at and find as the origin of that situation, of that dynamic. So we are able to get to the root cause with this work, which is not something that happens in many other forms of therapy. And this is why I love it so much, and I'm an avid promoter of it, because it gives us some extra abilities to produce insights and bring healing into sometimes very, very complex situations when there is suicide and rape, things like that. We know how to look and bring healing into that, not just for the individual asking the question, but it exponentially drives through the entire system. So we can actually send healing down the ancestral line.
Thank you, Illi. You did an amazing job of explaining something which is very difficult to explain.
It's a better witness than
yes, it is
trying to figure it out.
It is something that you have to experience because it does kind of go a little bit beyond the rational mind. I first did my constellation 12 years ago, my first constellation, and I still feel the ripple effect. So, you know, the insights that it brought me, you really do have those moments where you can just see patterns, and it does really help you not get so caught up with particular emotions. It's super beautiful.
That's right.
One thing I want to ask you is, you know, because family constellations is so good at healing, you know, very serious issues, sometimes people feel like they have to have something super serious to come into a constellation. And that's something I want to kind of push back against, because like for me myself, you know, okay, we all have our issues, but there wasn't some huge trauma or something very, very big that I felt I needed to address, but it still brought me so much healing and beauty. So I just want to, maybe you can speak to that as well, like, you know, that sometimes we don't realize that little shifts can be so significant.
Yeah. Yes, I call them windows. They're all windows. They are windows that helps us to look into one's structure and where the wounding is. For example, somebody may come with a question that relates to career. You know, they've been maybe trying different things, or they've been in a single career and they want to make change, and there's, you know, difficulties and challenges around that change. So the questions can emerge out of any given situation in life. And I'd like to quote Bert Hellinger, the creator, the father of systemic and family constellations, who said that any constellation is a family constellation. So even if somebody is coming to do something about their career and they're struggling with work and maybe with financial decisions, if we go down to the origin and to the essence of that behavior, what we will find is that there is some kind of a dynamic that relates to home, upbringing, maybe not in this particular generation, but maybe in the generation before that, maybe parents' generation, maybe one generation before that, World War II generation, you know, those who are now in the 90s and over, will be holding the origin, the root cause of these behaviors. So these windows allow us to enter. Doesn't matter what the question is, small, big, you know, big challenge, small challenge. It's not really what this is about. It's about having an opening, and through that opening, identify some kind of an historical pattern of trauma, it needs to be said, which still affects the people, the members of that same family, the same system today, as if it actually happened today. But what we see is that we carry with us as humans, part of the human experience, part of being human, is that we carry the gifts and the pain of our ancestors constantly on our backs. When it works, we don't question it. But when something doesn't work for us, when we become ill, maybe when there's a financial situation, when there's a challenging relationship, it is then that we begin to see, oh, this is, you know, when we do this work, we see that there is a ripple effect, there is a resemblance to traumas and events that took place, not in my generation, maybe not even in my parents' generation, may not be even my grandparents' generation. We sometimes go back 7 generations from the person who is asking the question in order to find the root cause of that situation, of that challenge. So the size of the window doesn't matter. It means that we can open it, and no matter how small or big it is, we can peer into something that relates to the past, which is still active today, which tells us past and present are not really separated, which is something that I really appreciate about this work. It is not bound by time. We can attend to wounds and traumas that occurred 60, 70, 100 and more years ago, and heal them today. So we alleviate the pressure of that crisis from the individual who is resonating with that ancestral trauma.
Yeah,
and when we look at the epigenetic discoveries of the past 15, 20 years, we know that epigenetic actually gave a scientific underpinning to what constellations and Bert Hellinger was doing that from the beginning. It was something that was very, very clear, this transgenerational trauma transmission.
It's nice to see actually a lot of science catching up on this and a lot more understanding of this, because it can sound, you know, quite out there for some people, but actually when you experience it, it's so beautiful. In that constellation that I had done, my first one, I had come up with this specific word that described, you know, the archetype of my experience at that time. And many years later, I think more than 10 years later, I was talking to my grandmother and she started telling me about her childhood. And she said, I feel like this. She used the exact same word, you know, it was the exact same dynamic that I had already worked in my constellation, same dynamic that my mother also was carrying. And you can really see, you know, for yourself, just how much we are really carrying these emotional imprints. It's really quite beautiful. I also just wanted to mention, maybe we can just talk for a couple of minutes about relationships, because as you said, like there's a lot of struggle in relationships. And as much as sort of, you know, Hollywood, you know, paints this very romantic and idealistic picture of relationships, the reality is, you know, once the honeymoon phase is over, we really get face to face with a lot of our psychological material. And we cause ourselves a lot of suffering by sort of trying to wade through our relationships without really understanding why we feel the way we do, because it's just so nice to blame it on our partner and say, you make me feel this way. But one of the beauties of this work is that you see that actually no one, you know, in our constellation is actually making us feel this way. And that understanding can really help people just go through their relationship issues in such a smoother way. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on this one.
That's right. Well, a relationship is a constellation. Yeah, you enter into anything that is greater than oneself is already a relational dynamic that relates to another person. There is wishes, desires, you know, do's and don'ts that relates to the dynamic between people. So being in a relationship is the perfect way to find our own wounds, meet our own shadow, enhance our own gifts. So there is the good and the bad all kind of happening at the same time in a relationship, which can be very, very overwhelming, because what we meet in relationship is we meet ourselves in the other. So in order to be able to take the other in, we need to be able to take ourselves in, and relationship will highlight all those things that we cannot accept about ourselves, because they will be reflected to us sometimes in a very powerful way, an overwhelming way, by our partner. And what we will do, we will call that a crisis. It's true, because a crisis is an indication that things cannot go on the way that they used to be, the way that the old pattern dictates. A crisis basically is a point where the system is telling us what's been happening so far is not going to work anymore, and something new needs to happen. And now that's basically quite a lot already, because it makes we will look at something that is negative and painful and problematic as an opportunity. It's actually an opportunity for change, an opportunity for transformation. And it is accelerated by the presence, the needs, the desire, or lack of it, of a partner. So partnerships, relationships are a perfect fertile ground to make personal growth. But sometimes people are not on the same page. Sometimes people are overwhelmed by what they discover about themselves in a relationship, and it's not always easy to communicate that with the other. So there is a language, something that is missing in the way of language, in the way of communication. When I work with couples, or when I work with individuals who are in a relationship, by placing representatives from the group, as we're going to be doing in Malta in September, by placing representatives, we are able, or those who are the issue holders, those who ask the question, able to observe these dynamics as they are played out, as the roles are carried by those who are standing in and representing. How does representative know what it is that they represent, and how is it that they behave in ways that are so much of a telltale of the situation and the dynamic? This is a subject of maybe 6 months of teaching, which I often do. That's something that I do over the school. I'm not going to be teaching everything about constellations in the weekend, but because I teach constellations, when something shows up, I will make reference to the systemic connotation and how, from a systemic perspective, what we call the systemic lens, we learn to see not just the event that takes place, the difficulty, the challenge in the couple or in any other forms, but we look at a much, much bigger picture, how the people in the relationship, in the partnership, may be entangled with something that is of their own family of origin. That is often what shows up in relationship, that we bring with us the dynamics that we have learned in our family of origin, and we now face them or exercise them with a person who is not part of that system, thereby creating a new system. So we are thinking, seeing, and observing from a particular systemic lens, not only what meets the eye, but also the ripple effects of the historical events or traumas that took place in the individuals that created that system. So relationships are a wonderful window, another opportunity. Yeah.
Fertile ground was a good way to explore it, to explain it. Illi, I want to keep this video a little bit short, so I don't know if there's anything else you would like to say or anything that you feel people should know about the workshop that you're going to host with us.
Well, I'm very excited to be coming to Malta, because there is a beautiful mix of cultures and history and influences and gifts and traumas. Always gifts and traumas. We always carry the gifts and use them, or if we don't use them, we can become more aware to what it is that is a gift given to us by culture, by ancestors, by historical events that relates to where we come from. So Malta would be a perfect example for that. And the ability to heal what is there and it is in the way of our growth or our independence or our autonomy. And that often relates to what wasn't there culturally or in the family context. So cultures which has complex history or a mix of many histories and many cultures are always fascinating.
Yeah.
From a systemic point of view.
We also, being a small island, the family unit is often very tight and can also put quite a lot of pressure on people's individual lives. So it's, definitely a lot to explore and work with, because it's something that obviously people feel the pressure and the responsibility for. So thank you, Illi. We're so looking forward to having you and hosting you. To everyone listening, Family Constellations it is really incredible work, and I'm so happy to bring this to Sanya, because the healing potential of it is really, really massive. So wonderful. Thanks again, Illi, and we'll see you in September.
So looking forward to the 3rd and 4th of September, and we're gonna meet and take it from there.
Perfect.
Using the systemic lens.
Indeed. Thank you, Illi.
Wonderful, Yasmin. Thank you very much.
Thank you.